Well, hi again, folks. Well, this is an update on my latest project. This is a larger version of the sluice I built in the previous video, and I've been doing some extensive testing with it to see how it works. One of the new modifications I did on this unit was to cut a 1/4 inch deep by 1/4 inch wide groove across the bottom of the deep well. This allows the gold to have a place it can drop into where it's protected from the flow of the water. Another thing I like about this unit is the fact that it has such a smooth water flow. This makes it very easy to work with extremely small gold, and there's very little turbulence to wash the gold on down and out the sluice. The water level on this is only about 1/4 of an inch deep over the entire length of the sluice, and that makes it so that there's just no upper and lower high water and low water limits. It's all about the same, and the water pours from one trough into the other, so that if a piece of gold comes down and gets stuck in the mat, it's not going to go anywhere because it'll just end up moving from one trough to another. And as long as you don't get a real strong water flow, it'll come to the first trough and drop in and stay there. Well, now let's try out the fluid bed. This is a good one for running dirt in, because if any gold happens to slip out and get washed on down, first of all, it's going to get caught on the slick plate. And secondly, it's going to, if it makes it past the slick plate, it's going to get caught in the first riffle of the mat. So there's virtually no way for the gold to get lost on this. And the nice feature about it is the gold drops down into that trough and makes it easy for cleanup. I'm still working on the water bar at this stage, and so it's a little uneven in the water flow. If you can kind of dump the dirt up under the water bar, the water will fluidize the dirt and allow the gold to fall down to the bottom of the deep well. Then it will get washed down and to the point where it will drop into that trough. It sometimes helps to take a little brush and kind of spread the material out along the trough so that it will get dispersed a little more evenly. But as you can see here, if any gold escapes from the fluid bed, then it's going to get caught right here on the slick plate. Well, this particular batch of material wasn't screened too closely. It was screened down to about 12 mesh, and everything was run through, so I've got a few bigger rocks in there. That's why it's nice to screen it, because all those larger rocks and stuff will get blown out, and all you'll have left is the gold in the end. Cleaning up the gold is quite easy on this. You just take a little tackle-on brush and brush it all into a pile, and then you can take your snuffer bottle and suck it up. Well, it sometimes takes a little bit of doing to get the gold cleaned up due to the fact that it likes to stick to the surfaces so well. And that makes it one of the most appealing things to me about this is gold likes to stick to everything on this sluice. Well, let's try the Miller table feature on this. This is one of my favorites due to the fact that if you're on the gold, it'll show up right here real quickly. And I do a lot of testing for other people, other prospectors. I test samples to see whether it's worth to send in for an assay, or people send me samples to see if there's any gold in it. And then I test other prospectors' tailings to see if they're missing fine gold. So this is kind of a fun one for me. And right away you can tell if there's any gold in the sample. And I think it's probably the most fun one. Well, between the sticky slick plate and the silicone mat, I have about 17 inches of sticky material that gold likes to stick to. So this makes it pretty hard for any gold to get washed on out, no matter how small. So this is a good thing for me. Well, as you're laying your dirt out across this and working it, invariably you're going to lose a little piece of fine gold or two. It's going to get washed on down. You don't have to worry about that with this because it'll always get caught in that first top riffle of the mat. And so it's really very difficult to lose any gold on this. Yeah, invariably I get sloppy and dump sand down into the trough. But that gives me another excuse to bring it out onto the Miller table and clean it up a little bit. As you can see, the trough here is the main mode of storage for the Miller table mode and for the fluid bed mode. And so that's why it's kind of important to have one that keeps the gold kind of out of the flow of the water and a little more protected. Well, a lot of the material that I work with is this very tiny gold. And so that's why I need a table or a sluice that can work with this fine stuff. Now this is some of the Washington black sand beach material, and as you can see it has some very tiny gold, and it also is easily recoverable with this table. Now the larger pieces of gold is 100 mesh, and the smaller pieces pass through 125 mesh, so it's probably up to around 150 mesh material on here. So this table will easily separate that from the black sand. As you can see, that you need a very slow, smooth flow to catch this very fine gold. And that's why it's important to have a good valve onto your water hose so that you don't blow this stuff right on out the sluice. Well, trying to round up this little tiny fine gold is kind of like herding cats. It's quite challenging to do. Well, I'm going to use this little pin to give you kind of an idea of how small this gold is that we've collected. And as you can see, it is pretty small. Some of that gold is just not much bigger than the point of the pin. Well, the last mode is what I call the sluice mode. And this is more for production, so that if you want to run a lot of material a little quicker, you turn up the water flow a little higher than you did for the miller table, and just keep shoveling the material onto the slick plate. And just ignore the gold, and it will eventually slide down and get caught in the top 2 or 3 riffles of the silicone mat. Well, this will give you kind of a close-up view of what's going on here with the mat. Now, as you can see, that rounded nose on the slick plate is guiding all the heavy materials like gold, black sand, and stuff right down into that top trough there. So this makes sure that it's going to get dumped in there right off. And that's a big plus. And that's one reason I really like these Drop Riffle mats. Now, between the stickiness of the slick plate and the stickiness of the silicone mat, the gold just doesn't have much of a chance on going anywhere except in this top trough up here. And so that's why I really like this combination. Now, if you will look at the first riffle, just up a little from to the left slightly of the center, you will see a little piece of gold that is stuck right to the top of that riffle. Now, this is going to stay there even with all the sand being dumped on top of it. So this will kind of give you an idea of just how this gold likes to stick to the silicone. Whoops, well, finally got bumped down into the next trough down below. And that's where it'll stay until we do a clean out. Well, in the top trough, you have some nice clean gold there, and so you can just snuffer it up if you'd like. Or you can remove the mat and dump it in a bucket of water and either pan it out or use the miller table here to separate the gold from the rest of the material. It can get a little tricky trying to get the gold snuffered up due to the fact it just wants to stick to the silicone and doesn't want to be picked up. Well, here on the final test is kind of a blowout test. What I did was I increased the angle to about 13 degrees and cranked the pump up to a full 800 gallons per hour. So we're going to see if we can blow the gold out or see how much we're going to lose running at a kind of a real, almost an extreme condition. So this will be a good test to see how well this mat holds up. Well, in order to keep my sluice short enough to fit in my recirculating tote, I had to make the mat only about 9 inches long, and I was hoping that that would be enough. Well, as it turns out, it was more than enough because the furthest down I have found any of the gold was in only the third trough down. So most of that mat is not being used. As you can see, it's catching all the black sand as well, which is what I want, because I always find a little bit of gold when I process my black sand. Well, this will give you an idea of the reference size of the pin I'm going to use. Now, one of the surprising things I found out from this blowout test was how much very, very fine gold that it actually caught as well. Now, this is some of my gutter dirt that I've been collecting, and I just cleaned it up to use for these tests. So you can see all the little tiny gold that it caught that was already in the sand. Now that means that not only did we not blow out any gold, but we also kept a very, very tiny gold. So yeah, these mats are something else. Well, after each one of these runs, I always take the tailings and run them either across the miller table or pan them out to see how much gold has been lost. So far, out of all my tests, I have yet to find a single piece of gold that have been lost into the tailings. Doing a clean out on these is quite easy. You just tip the sluice up on the edge and let kind of the excess water run off from the mat. Then you just roll the mat up and drop it down into the bucket. And that's all there is to it, and you have a nice clean mat ready to go again. Well, that should give you kind of an idea of my latest project. I'm just really happy with this little sluice, and it's just about everything I've been looking for. And I want to offer a big thanks to Alan Robertson for coming up with the idea of these silicone mats. These really make a big difference, and they're so much better than the rubber mats, you can't believe it. Anyway, I'll leave a link to his site down in the description, and if you want, you can check out his material a little further. So, as always, thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you later. Bye now.